pronunciation here. Maruta Vitols? Is that, am I even
Yes.
close?
No, you are. Thank you.
Okay.
And I know the agenda misspelled my first name, but it is Maruta.
Okay. So when I get that wrong during the meeting,
It will be
excuse.
okay.
Thank you. Great, very kind. See, we got 1, 2, 3, 3 of us. We're waiting for one more.
Yep.
To have an unmistakable quorum.
How many do we need for quorum?
One more. You want to place bets on who it'll be? My money is on Pam.
Do we
April
know?
4th.
Did anyone say they weren't coming?
Lyle and Susan.
Lyle and Susan are not coming.
And then who's left? Pam?
Pam, Bill,
Bill's coming. Bill's coming.
Ollie.
and Bill Holland.
Bill's joining right now.
Well, someone's going to put the username Bill Humphrey. I don't know. I am not yet confident that we have more. We'll see.
Recording
can
in
go ahead.
progress.
Great. Good evening, everybody. It is July 12th. This is a regular meeting of the Programs and Services Committee. We are being video, audio recorded. This is all on the record. So watch it if you're going to say anything, especially if you're going to say anything disparaging about this committee. Go after me. Leave the committee members alone. Okay. Let's get right to it. First item on our agenda. Oh no, let me first introduce who's here. From the committee, Vice Chair of the committee from Ward 6, Councilor Brenda Noel. From Ward 1, Councilor Maria Greenberg. From Ward 5, Councilor Bill Humphrey. I'm Josh Krinsman, Councilor at Large from Ward 4, Chair of the committee. We're also joined by Councilor Vicky Danberg. Welcome, Councilor Danberg. Councilor Humphrey, it is you. Welcome.
It is me.
Okay, let's get right to it. First item on our agenda is item 23523. This is the appointment of Maruta Vitols as a Jackson Homestead trustee. Ms. Vitols, what we do is we give you a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, tell us why you're interested in serving in this capacity. I'll then open it up to councilors if they have questions, which gives you an opportunity to answer those questions. We'll then move to a committee vote on the nomination. Okay, that sounds okay to you. I will give you an opportunity. Tell us why it is that you are interested or willing to be a Jackson Homestead trustee.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with all of you. You all should have received a copy of my resume and application already, but kind of the brief bullet points. I'll keep this as short as I can. Former Mayor Teddy Mann. Not as short as his speeches were, but I'll try my best. I'm a lifelong educator and a lifelong resident of Newton. I'm a product of the Newton Public School System. So yay, Mason, Rice, Brown, and Newton South. I'm currently volunteering at Newton North in their Transitioning Together program. We're always looking for mentors, by the way. So if any of you want to volunteer and are interested in mentoring, students will be the first in their family to go to college. Hit me up. I'm happy to talk to you about my experience in the program. I'm also a trained media historian. My PhD is in the history of art, but it is specifically in media history. And that combined with my experiences in museums and curatorial capacities makes me believe that I think I'm a really great candidate to be a trustee for the Jackson Homestead. I'm excited to share my knowledge and my skill set and experience to help kind of move and shepherd the Jackson Homestead now into kind of the next chapter, a revitalized chapter, hopefully, for its future. Why now specifically? As a historian, I've got a lot of anxiety about what's been going on, both as a historian and as an educator, with these contemporary sweeping book bans, attacks on critical race theory, and just attacks on teachers and curriculum in general, I can't help but feel that folks, instead of wanting to learn from history so they don't make the same mistakes, are actually trying to go backwards and revise history and erase it. And I find that incredibly alarming. So I think now is a great time for me to jump in and share my energy and interest and enthusiasm as a Jackson trustee homestead, and help kind of shepherd the institution, which truly is kind of a wonderful jewel of Newton, that I think is really deserves a lot more attention and nurturing. So hopefully I can help energize the other trustees and board members, and we can help move the Jackson homestead into kind of a new phase, one that is not just kind of survival mode, but hopefully thriving. At least that's my hope for my 3-year tenure, and maybe beyond. We'll see. But I'm ready to invest my time and energy, and I hope that you will grant me the opportunity to do so. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. I want to first mention that we've been joined by, from Ward 8, Councillor Holly Ryan, who's on the committee, and from Ward 3, Councillor Pam Wright, who's also on the committee. So that brings us to 6, which is our full complement for the evening. Thank you for the introduction. Very much appreciate it. I see we have a question from Councillor Wright. Councillor Wright?
Yes, just a quick question. Also to say I'm also part of T2, and I've been doing it for many years, and I think it's a great program.
Yay.
And I actually have 2 students this year.
Awesome.
What is a media historian? Just like the 2-minute elevator pitch.
So I have been trained in studying the history of media. My specific expertise is in political documentary. And if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty, it's in Eastern European political documentary. My dissertation was on the particular Latvian filmmaker who chronicled the collapse of the Soviet Union, and also kind of collaborated with the BBC, which was really, and like Channel 4, which was unheard of at the time. And then that was the dissertation. And then while I was a faculty member at Emerson College and at Olin College, the classes I taught were all like the history of media, from like the beginnings of film, TV, radio, all that stuff, all the way to contemporary times, including the internet. And at Olin, I expanded even more and was talking about specific things like using media for activism. I taught a course on cyber activism, which kind of coincided with the Arab Spring, which was very nice timing. So as a media historian, basically, I look at primarily visual media, but also it's now broadly including things like the internet and how that it both impacts and is influenced by what's going on in particular cultural contexts. Does
Okay,
that help?
thank you. Yep. Thank you.
Councillor Humphrey.
Thank you. Yes, I really appreciate you stepping up and seeking this appointment, and for many of the reasons you stated about kind of the broader picture of what's going on right now. It's certainly a very interesting and varied resume that you sent us in, which I also like to see that. And you mentioned about Latvia, and it reminded me of a professor that I had in college. He had grown up in a post-World War II refugee camp in Latvia. And it really kind of influenced his whole, who he was and everything, and his outlook on the world. And he ended up as a geography professor and would kind of teach people about, how their environment around them shapes their sense of self and things like that, because he said, it was very strange and surreal to grow up in this temporary encampment where you couldn't see any landscape features. It was just a completely flat area. You couldn't see any cities, you couldn't see any mountains, you couldn't see the ocean, and so I just was thinking about him recently again, and so when you mentioned that, it came to mind. So I'm very excited that you're going to be getting involved with Historic Newton and everything.
Oh, great. Thank you. Can I ask what his name was?
Professor Bunksha from the University of Delaware. I don't remember his
Bunksha.
first name at the time, but
I'll ask my mom, because the running joke in my family is she knows half of the Latvians in outside of Latvia, because she spent part of her childhood in a refugee camp, and it was the largest one in Germany. So she basically went to school with either them or a sibling. It's kind of outrageous. So I'll ask her, Dr. Bunksha. So thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Counselor Noel.
I'm excited about this and I'm happy to move it when it's time.
Counselor Noel has moved approval of the appointment. Any discussion on that motion? All right, I will just say that as someone, if I'm not mistaken, you got your PhD from the Ohio State University.
Yes, it's
So I
now
think-
been copyrighted. So yes,
Terrific.
it's the Ohio State University.
Excellent. I'm going to be supportive as well. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Right?
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so what this means is the committee's recommended approval. It will go before the full city council at the next full city council meeting, which is in August, I believe. And after that, the appointment will be finalized. There shouldn't be any problems moving forward,
All
okay? And you are welcome to join us for the rest of the night. You're also welcome to log off. We're not offended if you don't want to spend this Wednesday night in the summer with the Programs and Services Committee. So
Well, thank you, everybody. Again, I very much appreciate the vote of confidence, and I look forward to the full councilors hopefully approving this and then updating all of you with our fantastic work for Historic Newton.
terrific, thank you.
Everybody. Take care.
The next item on our agenda is item 66-23, discussion and possible amendment to section 1272. This is the what is currently the Sustainable Containers Packaging and Single-Use Ordinance. The plan for tonight is to get an update from Councilor Danberg and the folks that she's been working with on this ordinance. I expect we'll hear a little bit about discussions they've had with the Charles River Chamber, with the business community, where they sort of are expecting this proposal to evolve to. And this is geared towards hopefully voting in September before this committee on this ordinance. So don't anticipate a vote tonight. But again, want to get an update and hear where things are at. So Councilor Danberg, if you are ready, and you can introduce your guests, whoever you want, but tell us where we're at.
Thank you, Councilor Chairman Krentzman. Yes, I have with me tonight two members of our working committee, Alan Gordon and Sun Woo Kang, who will give some details after I've kind of run through a general update. The mayor has requested the two major items are plastic water bottles, not carbonated water, but just regular still water in plastic bottles, and the black plastic containers that have been shown to be made in large part out of heavy metals, including mercury, cadmium, and lead. So the comments that we got early on were that this type of container was great for hot food because the lid snapped on securely, and it turns out that the worst thing you can put into a black plastic container is hot food or to heat it up in any way, because the heavy metals leach into the food. So the mayor has requested that she said she's okay with the black plastics and that we're fine to go ahead with that, and has requested that we remove the plastic water bottles for further study, which we have done. So we're going to have a parens A and a parens B, and the parens B will contain the plastic water bottles. We have been meeting with more stakeholders. We've met, of course, since we formed the committee. We have met continually with the Charles River group under the Chamber of Commerce under Greg, and Greg has had several meetings with us now with the restaurant group, and they've been, we think, very fruitful. They've had good suggestions. They've aired their concerns, and we continue to work with them. We have spoken with Newton Wellesley Hospital. Newton Wellesley is completely on board with this. And in fact, their goal is to, and they don't have any problem with the water bottles and are going to do a voluntary ban of the water bottles themselves. And their goal, as soon as they can do this, is to go 100% compostable for all of the products that they serve food in the entire hospital. We also spoke with some senior facilities. The only concern that they don't have any problem with the black plastics. The only concern, or any of the other items, the only concern that they have is that they occasionally, as does Newton Wellesley, need to be able to use plastic water in plastic bottles for medically compromised patients who need to eat in their rooms. And that's the same for the senior facilities and for the hospital. The schools are on board. I had a conversation with Amy Mistro today. September 1, she is fine with that deadline and will voluntarily do away with all still water and plastic bottles in all of the schools. They are not concerned with students moving to sugared drinks because there are no sugared drinks, sodas that are sold in the schools. So I think at this juncture, I will turn it over in the interest of time to Alan and Sunwoo. Alan, why don't you start with some other details that you might have?
Sure. Thanks, Councilor Danberg, and thanks, Chair Kritzman and everyone else for having us here again. We were last in front of you, I believe it was April 14th, and I submitted several files for the Friday packet, which include the current draft of the ordinance. It has a date of July 5th because that was the last date I had made some edits to it. I have a short summary document of what has changed since the April 14th version you had seen, and our key plan for this evening was to give you some of the updates as Vicky has done of the additional meetings and interested parties that we've spoken to, and just I can run really quickly. I'm not going to go into every line item, but of the changes we've made. And
Yeah,
then really
please.
to be available to answer any questions if anyone has them. So most of the changes I would say are in the category of either, as we continue to read through this, some cleanups in some of the definitions and tweaking of some of the language just to make it a little tighter and easier to read and understand. And most of the remaining were removing the water bottles, as Councilor Danberg said, and putting that in parens B, and then various requests that came out of the multiple conversations we're continuing to have with Greg Reedman and the chamber constituents. For one example is, we added a definition of accessories so that it was easier to describe what's commonly known as the skip the stuff, where you don't automatically get plastic utensils in your takeout order. And we added a clarification that self-service stations were still acceptable in restaurants if someone wanted to pick up and get their own takeout containers. We added a clarification that due to certain supply chain disruptions or inability to hire staff for dishwashing for dine-in customers. So there are various things. They're all, they're in the summary. Happy to read through that if that's helpful, but I don't think I need to do that. Two other things I want to point out that weren't in any of the details I sent, because we're now looking probably to request, hopefully one of you will move to vote in the September timeframe. There's a September 1 effective date for some of the items. We'll obviously push that out to post September 1. There's a couple other tweaks on the waiver process that based on a conversation I had with Greg yesterday. that I think makes sense based on some feedback I got from him, and that obviously wasn't in what I put in the Friday packet. So a few more tweaks. We'll continue to talk to more people. There may be some more between now and September, but we're happy to answer questions either tonight or separately. If folks haven't had a chance to read through that and you have questions from us offline, we're happy to do that.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate that. I'll ask a couple of questions first, and I'll see if my colleagues have any questions. And then I think the appropriate move is to hold. But first, let me ask, we received a letter, and this dealt with the balloons, which I know is on there, and there are sort of two issues. There's the planned timed releases, and then there is the general, sale and distribution of balloons. And the request was to sort of modify and prohibit the planned releases, but not to go after the, general sale and distribution. Has there been any resolution on that or movement on that?
Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I would say we haven't made any changes to that language. I would defer to the city council to make a decision on that. I mean, personally, I would prefer it's, it is as currently written, but in the end, that decision isn't mine. So I would defer to you all to come to a resolution on that. And so obviously, if you decide to change that, we can tweak that language.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was on effective dates. Like you said, some of this talks about September 1st. There are sort of different provisions, not holding you to anything, nothing etched in stone, but as a general rule, were you thinking that the effective dates should be X months after we pass this? And if so, what is that X?
We thought January 1st. Yeah, for most of the items. We have a number of groups that are voluntarily going for September 1, and that's fine with us. But we would do a January 1 rollout for almost everything else. Again, unless the committee felt that there needed to be a tweak on some items that were given more time.
Yeah, I think the thought was, the things that are currently September 1, we would just roll into the items that go into effect January 1. There already are some that go. That was the thinking.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I would be interested to hear from supermarkets, from certain establishments that do a lot of takeout food containers, their prepared food, things like that, how long they felt they needed to sort of transition from the black plastic, because I'm supportive of eliminating the black plastic, but I also want to be realistic with our businesses and how much time they're going to need to transition. So I would just, I would either want to hear from them or want to hear that you heard from them and that, we were setting some realistic time frame for them to come into compliance.
Yes, the plan is to not force anyone to get stuck with inventory that they cannot use. Everyone can, you can request a waiver. If you've got 9 months worth of inventory, then fine, we'll give it to you. It's not a problem. But we thought that many places do not carry that kind of inventory and would be able to abide by January 1st. But we can be flexible on that date.
Yeah,
Gotcha,
and I know I spoke to Carl O'Hara, and he is one that has a fair amount of inventory, I think. So yeah, we would accommodate that.
Okay. Thank you. Let me go to the councilors who have their hands up. Councilor Wright, followed by Councilor Noel. Councilor Wright.
Thank you, Chair Grinsman. I noticed in there's only a couple places for waivers. Can anything be waived, or only the ones that specifically say waivers are available?
Yeah, that is a good question, and is part of the discussion I had with Greg yesterday. In fact, he asked a similar question. So the initial waiver language that's in, is it item 4? I forget. I don't have it open in front of me. Like in the enforcement section says something about a waiver for if items are not available or due to economic hardship. And that would be relative to, we have heard from the chambers, about supply chain issues, and even if they buy, you know, a simple replacement for a black plastic container may not be available, or, you know, might, you know, if it reasonably cost, you know, 2 or 3 times as much. I don't think they do, but, you know, that was a concern. So that part of the enforcement section was meant to be specific to availability of items that are banned in the supply chain, right? There's then another waiver language regarding dine-in dishware. And so effectively, after my conversation with Greg, I'm going to propose combining those two under enforcement and making that more clear, which I think will better address the question you're asking. Because I agree, right now it's written, it's a little hit or miss and not clear across the board.
And how are you going to be communicating to all the businesses in Newton? Have you done so already for this initial to get their feedback? But, you know, I'm worried just a small little place, or what about pop-ups that come in and things like that? How is that information going to be communicated?
So in, you know, in part of the Friday packet, we had a graphic that is an example of the type of educational material we would create, and we can create other versions of that. We can create food establishment specific versions, and we will, you know, we would request that the city, because the city has access to reach out to all the restaurants. I mean, I don't know. It's actually a question I have. I don't know if the city could give us permission
If
to.
if I may, Alan, is that
Yeah,
all right
go
if I
ahead.
speak?
Yeah,
So
please.
today in the chamber's email that I got, they are advertising the rollout of the private hauler ordinance now that it's passed. And I believe it's in collaboration with the Sustainable Materials Management Division, Juanita Traber. They're going to be giving, I think, like 2 webinars on the rollout of the private hauler ordinance and what businesses would need to do. So we would be able to do something similar to that in conjunction with the chamber, which has a wide distribution network to businesses. We have also offered to the chamber to create a collaborative group through Green Newton, where we could cooperate to help businesses source materials, to figure out the details of the ordinance, and perhaps also create maybe a kind of cooperative where there might be bulk purchasing, allowing for cheaper sourcing of materials. These are all ideas that, you know, we have floating around, and we would love to get together with the chamber to really kind of work on, you know, getting a system set up.
So the chamber is representing a lot of businesses, but they don't represent all the businesses. So that's what I'm worried about. I mean, so someone going out and actually flyering every business, you know, besides mailings and emails and things like that, I think would be important. And then also, you know, with pop-ups or new businesses coming in, this information should be readily available if a business is looking to come into Newton. I don't know if that should be with the planning department or who would go with, so that they would have that information, so they would know, you know, how.
Vicki, that would be Health and Human Services, wouldn't it, when businesses apply for permits?
Oh, you're muted, Vicki.
Councilor Danberg, you're on mute.
Sorry, there are something like 425 businesses on the list at the Health and Human Services that deal with food. And in fact, every business that deals with food is on that list and is inspected by the health department. So Linda Walsh has said that she will make that list currently, the current list available to us. We have the list from maybe a year ago. Another couple of things that will be done is that Green Newton is very anxious to help us spread the word and provide education to anyone who wants and needs it. And the mayor has said that her newsletter, that I think has gone over 35,000 email addresses, will also be available for education and outreach.
And so how many food businesses? 425, did you say, or 450?
Something like 425.
So does that include places like a 7-Eleven or a gas station?
It includes everybody that serves food that needs to get inspected by the Health and Human Services.
So does like a gas station or a 7-Eleven, if they don't have any hot food, but they sell food, which some of this would pertain to
They sell
them.
donuts, for example. Most of these places, even a little gas station, corner store places, will sell some type of food. Sandwiches, packaged sandwiches, these are all on that list.
Okay. And the waivers or the fines and stuff, at some point I'd like to look at it a little bit more. I'm worried that, someone will get a notice the first time and then they'll get fined the second one, but they can't react really quickly to some of these things. So I don't know if, we give them a certain period of time.
The goal in this, Pam, is not to punish people. The goal is to gain compliance. So if a party has, because they didn't realize that they had to comply and we find them out of compliance, or if they need more time on something, they thought that they could comply by a certain date and they can't, or if 2 years from now their supplier goes bankrupt and they are scrambling to find a new supplier, anything like that will be allowable as a waiver. We are not in the business of trying to fine people. We're trying to achieve compliance.
And that's what I'd like to hear. I just want to make sure that the waiver is a simple process for them, so that they don't rack up a lot of fines. If someone else is actually doing the fining, I don't know what division will actually doing the fines, Again, we want compliance and we don't want to, hit our businesses hard. Okay, that's it for now. Oh, just one more thing. I'm sorry, just one more thing. If the balloons, if we do allow to sell balloons, there should be a notice wherever the balloons are sold that they cannot be released in the city of Newton or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Councilor Noel, followed by Councilor Ryan. Councilor Noel.
Thank you. So I have been, reading like everyone else, the dangers of plastics in our environment. But what concerns me about this particular docket item is that it takes on too much too quickly. And, the big red flags I see are the glitter makeup, ear cleaners and dental floss, because what concerns me is if we don't have a plan for enforcement that's thoughtful and effective, it's going to not be a good thing, and it's not going to be effective, and it's could actually backfire. So what I would like to see is that I think all of this is important. We know that plastics are a problem, but I think that we should be doing this in stages, and perhaps have the first bite at this apple go out, address the restaurant piece, and the second bite at the apple address balloons, and maybe the third retail, because I just don't know how we would even enforce this. And if we can't enforce it, then it's a joke. We saw this with leaf blowers. If we don't really think through the enforcement, it languishes for years and there's bad energy on both sides. So I actually think this would be more effective if we took it in stages. I can't even imagine how we would begin to monitor glitter and eyeshadow. I mean, like with someone, like think of Sephora in Chestnut Hill, which is Newton, Like, would you just go through the shelves and pull everything off? Like, everything has glitter in it right now. And then you've got all the pharmacies, CVS, Walgreens, there's another makeup store in Chestnut Hill besides Sephora. I just think we need to be realistic in order to be effective.
Thank you, Counselor Noel. Do you guys want to say anything about the about glitter?
Sunwoo,
Oh,
Well,
go ahead,
I don't
Sunwoo, if you
really
want, yeah.
have a lot of, I guess, data to support, but, you know, in the last sustainable packaging go around, we did ban polystyrene or polystyrene from retail establishments as well. And just anecdotally, I have not seen any polystyrene in the retail stores, you know, passing through the disposable plates and cups. That has been pretty effective. I'm guessing that the monitoring is not that rigorous, and yet by the fact that they were put on notice, I think it has had a strong effect.
So if I can just jump in, Chair. So a styrofoam cup is a styrofoam cup. I mean, if anybody's, you know, turned on anything, everything that Taylor Swift touches has glitter in it. So every teen in the world right now has glitter in their life, in every product. I have sunscreen right now with glitter in it. So I think that's really different analogy than a styrofoam cup.
So perhaps you're saying that we need to really define our definition of glitter and be very specific.
I would urge you to get this through full council and have it be effective, to think about this in stages and to narrow down your scope for this stage, get it through, and then think thoughtfully through the next stage. Like when you say glitter and makeup, take a field trip over to Sephora and see what you're really addressing. Because I guarantee you 2/3 of makeup right now has glitter in it. And then how the heck are we going to monitor that? And what's the fee structure? And is that going to be, you know, what department is going to be walking through Sephora? I think it's really complicated. And so I think we have to take this through stage by stage and be thoughtful about it, because we saw with leaf blowers that if we don't have buy-in from the enforcement entity, it doesn't go well for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I would also add Bloomingdale's or other, you know, stores with makeup counters, you know, definitely may want to weigh in on something like this, because I agree with Councilor Noel. I think glitter is a big component of what they do. And
I think it's a point well taken, Councilor Noel, and we will certainly put that on our agenda for our next discussion.
Excellent, thank you. Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm coming from a place where I worked in food service for years, and then ended up running establishment and owning a couple myself. I think I should have been more involved in this, but I wasn't. I wasn't asked to. So I had a long conversation today with Greg Griebman. I've been talking to restaurant owners myself. That's mostly what I'm worried about. I know what the costs are. I know what the supply chain issues were, because I was doing this for a large nonprofit only 5 years ago. A year before I came on the council is when I retired. And I was running shelters and soup kitchens and group homes, and try and keep those going on a state-funded budget and donations. And believe me, when I tried to switch, and I did, over to you know, compostable containers and, you know, better for the environment, I didn't have the money. And I also, a few of us that were in the bigger human service companies, had meetings with the state about, you know, how we're going to switch over. You know, it's going to have to be state funding and that, so that's where I'm coming from on this. It's not because I don't want to do it. It's not because I don't care about the environment, because I know most of you know I do, and most of the environmental groups in the city know I do. But I'm speaking coming from a person that's been in a situation trying to run a small restaurant or concession stand, and also trying to take care of homeless people and homeless children and substance abuse people on a state budget. So, it goes to what Council Noel was saying. I worry about, just like with the leaf blowers, that the back end of this isn't taken care of enough. I know what health inspections are when they come in cold to your restaurant, your food service business. I've been in situations where they come in and we'd have dishwashers, we'd have old Buffalo china, and we'd be doing most of us had dishwashers in the old days. The health department would come in and test your water temperature and tell you that it's not the right temperature, and go get your paper out and switch to paper until you can get it fixed, and we'll be back in a week to test it again. So has anybody thought about that? And the other thing is so we're telling pizza stores to also go to China, go to Buffalo China, go to and what if your dishwasher calls in sick or doesn't show up? In this day and age, everybody's struggling for employees, especially in retail and small restaurants. And I was worried today also about, if you get takeout or any of those packaged cooked or prepared items from like Wegmans, it's all black. And I'm for getting rid of that, because I cringe every time if I have to use it, I throw it in the blue barrel instead of the green barrel, because we're not supposed to throw it in the green barrel. So, I'm very, very aware of this. I'm not there on the balloons and plastics. I just think in the big grand scheme of climate change right now, I'd rather see us force new, and this has nothing to do with you, but I'm just saying this. I'd rather see us forcing builders of all types, including residential, to put solar panels on roofs instead of worrying about plastics and balloons right now. I understand how it all piles up and ends up in the ocean, which I love the ocean, and a lot of you know where I am most of the summer. That's just thoughts. I want people to think about this, and I always worry about the back end. Like when we were going to do the plastic bottles, I kept hopping on, and Alan knows I kept hopping on, okay, good, but what are we going to use instead? Because I've been to towns that use the cottons, like the milk cottons and orange juice cottons, but we don't allow that to be recycled in the city. So, in my point, and then you look at the aluminum, but a couple of restaurants said it's too expensive, and how we're going to make any money on it. And God, too many plastic bottles, too many plastic water bottles. So I'm playing devil's advocate a lot too. And I'm having the ping pong ball go back and forth in my head for what I know is right, but how do we really implement this? Maybe we have to look at our recycling and our composting better in Newton, and make composting affordable too in the city of Newton. I think that's about it for me. And we do have state-funded group homes in Newton too. So, that's why I'm talking about that. And I am definitely not for doing this in September, but, I am for getting it done by January 1st, and with some tweaks to it. And I know there's not going to be a big rush to go in by this health department and start inspecting, because they just can't do it. They don't have the help to do it. But when they're on their regular inspections, it's probably when they will do this, which is fine. But so I don't think we'll see that. I worry about the bigger stores though. The bigger grocery stores and the department stores. But that's about it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right,
Alan,
thanks.
would you give an update on small places that are like a pizza parlor, for example, that is probably too small to have dishwashing and hire dishwashers? Why don't you explain that to the committee, because I think there may be a misconception there. You're unmute.
Sorry. There is an ability certainly to have a waiver if there's, you know, a restaurant doesn't have the ability, doesn't have dishwashing equipment, you know, for using, you know, reusable dishware, and they don't have the space or really economically, financially wherewithal to install that. There's, you know, it was mentioned, I think a couple of people mentioned staff, you know, hiring staff. Yes, there's a waiver option if staff shortage, if someone's quits. And in fact, that was part of my discussion with Greg yesterday. You know, if someone quits today, you know, does a restaurant need to scramble to suddenly file a waiver before they can hire someone else? And we discussed a way to address that in the language around that. So, you know, the restaurant doesn't have to worry that, you know, tomorrow an inspector is going to show up and complain because their dishwasher left and they haven't filled that position yet. So I think at least so far, all the points, you know, the glitter, the Councilor Ryan, your points are well taken, and certainly I think Vicky, you know, Councilor Danberg, myself, Sunwoo, and others will discuss this, and you know, we can continue to tweak this and hopefully put something in front of you guys in September that will be acceptable.
Yeah. And I'd like to just add one more fact, and that is we're thinking about the oceans, and by the year 2050, according to, I think this is already in your packet, by the year 2050, there will be more plastic by weight in the ocean than fish. 44% of ocean plastics are linked to takeout food. So the goal here is to try and reduce the total amount of plastic that is used in any way we can.
Thank you. I'm going to go next to Councilor Greenberg. I just want to say, I see that Paula Parkas has raised her hand. We're not doing public comments this evening. So if you're a member of the public looking to comment, this is not the opportunity tonight to do that. Councilor Greenberg, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Councilor Danberg and her working group for all their hard work. This is such an important issue, and I really appreciate all their detailed hard work on this. In general, I'm in strong support of this. I think, though, it does need some tweaking, as Dr. Councilor Noel said. The glitter is something that we need to look at. But I just wanted some clarification on what Councilor Danberg said about the mayor and the administration being concerned about water bottles. Is that off the table right now? I wasn't clear about that.
So
Go ahead, Alan.
oh, sorry. So yeah, we met with the mayor and members of her team, as well independently with Linda Walsh, and I would say from the perspective of Councilor Danberg and our little group, it's off the table for September, but in the packet, again, we had what I guess is referenced as a parens B. We have a separate ordinance that's docketed that deals only with the water bottles. And my feeling is we need to do more education and, from our perspective, convincing of the mayor and Linda Walsh and perhaps as well some of the councilors. I mean, Councilor Ryan mentioned some concerns about the water bottles, but we before we think a vote is ready to be taken on the water bottles. And that may not be until next year. I don't know when that will be, but I don't think it's not completely off the table, but I don't see that it will be in the ordinance that we hope to be voted on in September.
Okay, well, I hope it's included soon. The other question I had was, Councilor Danberg mentioned New Wellesley Hospital. I'm so glad to hear that they're volunteering to participate in this. So did they say they're not going to have metal forks and knives and ceramic dishes, but just all compostable for staff and patients?
If I remember correctly, Sunwoo and Alan were there at the meeting. That's what they said. Prior to COVID, they went with compostable products. They then had, during COVID, a supply chain problem, and they are now able to obtain the products again and have gone back. And as I said, their goal is 100% compostable with no recycling and no waste in their food service products.
And that's for patients also, is that correct? Is that what you said?
Yes, with the exception of some small items. And the only item that they have brought up so far is the need for them to serve water in a plastic bottle to medically compromised patients who are served in their rooms. And we'll just do a waiver on those things.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Sunwoo, I see your hand is raised. Did you want to respond to something that was said earlier?
I just wanted to add a little bit. So I want to implore the counselors to consider this issue, not so much as a waste issue. It is, but it's not nearly as great a waste issue as it is a health issue. We're talking about toxics. We're talking about each of us currently having microplastics in our bodies. We're talking about BPA being in breast milk. And as it stands, the single-use plastic is proliferating. We're not going to reduce it anytime soon unless we take immediate action. This is what we're trying to do with this ordinance. We're not just trying to get rid of waste. We're trying to preserve the world for our children whose lives are at risk. It's scientific fact that we already have bits of plastics in our bodies. So I implore the counselors to think of this as a very urgent issue. I understand the businesses have considerations, and we are definitely trying to take that into account. But this is a matter of health for all of us and our children. And there's no way to get rid of the plastics as it stands right now. We have no method to remove microplastics from our bodies. This is a very, very serious issue, and this is step one of what we're trying to do. And we're not trying to be extreme. We are not demanding that businesses all move immediate to usable containers. We're trying to take this step by step. We will continue to work with businesses to make it as easy as possible on them, but I implore you to think about this as a health issue for us all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to just
maybe
make one. I'd like to make
hang on one second, Councilor Danberg, if you would.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Just want to note we have 2 more hands up, so I'll go to those in just a second. I want to note that we've been joined by Councilors Norton and Councilors Maliki. Thank you both for joining us. Appreciate that. Points well taken, Sunwoo. Thank you. Appreciate it. Maybe your children deserve a much better planet. Mine lately don't. My kids have been acting up like you wouldn't believe, but I want to go to someone else whose children probably do deserve a better planet. Councilor Norton.
Oh, I don't know about that. 3 teenage boys. No, they absolutely do. All of our children do, as we do. And so just a +1 to what Sunwoo said. I would like to be able to move on this in this session. I am sorry that I'm late and missed some of the discussion, but in general, I would say that if if the issue is that we've been requested by the mayor's office to not move as quickly on this, it would not be the first time that that has happened with a mayor in my 10-year tenure on the Board of Aldermen and then City Council. So we are an independent body. We don't work for the mayor. So if the City Council thinks this is something that's an urgent issue we should move ahead on, obviously we should reduce the barriers that have been identified, but I think we should move ahead as quickly as we possibly can for all the reasons that Sunwoo just laid out. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Danberg. Did you want to say something else?
Yes, there's just one other issue that I'd like to bring out, and that is I certainly appreciate Councillor Noel's comments. She has 2 daughters that are, I'm sure, have just gone through their teen years, and I'm sure there's a lot of
They
glitter
actually,
around the house.
my daughters bathe in glitter, so there you go.
And that's true. Glitter is a very popular thing. However, glitter and micro abrasive plastic little balls that you can't even see that are in soaps and things for cleansers, for example, are, according to many environmentalists, the very worst thing that is going into our environment. It is they're being poured into the water supply, and we're drinking, and all of the fish and the animals that drink water are drinking this water, and we're then eating it, and it's accumulating in our bodies. So while I understand the difficulty of and we may have to back off on this, of getting rid of plastic abrasives and glitter, it's the very worst that there is for the environment.
Thank you. I think that probably brings us to our conclusion tonight. If someone wants to make a motion to hold.
I make a motion to hold.
Councillor Ryan has moved hold. Again, I think there is ongoing work on this. I appreciate all the work, Councillor Danberg, that you're doing. Mr. Gordon, Ms. Kong, all the work that you're all doing, really appreciate it. I know you're working with Greg Reedman as well. I think we're slowly getting to a much better place where I think we can all be in agreement on something to move forward. So very much appreciate that. On the motion to hold, any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is 6. Great.
Thank
you
you all for your time and for your comments. We really appreciate it, and we'll take these comments to heart.
Excellent, thank you. We have several reappointments as a committee, so I'll introduce those one at a time. Item 248-23, this is the reappointment of Michael Flaherty to the Health and Human Services Advisory Council. Did someone want to make, Councillor Humphrey?
I believe that's my ward. I'd like to move approval. Thank you.
Councillor Humphrey has moved approval. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 6-0, thank you. Item 249-23, the reappointment of Matthew Stafford to the Health and Human Services Advisory Council. I will motion to approve. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? 6-0, thank you. Item 250-23, the reappointment of Asa Finelli to the Health and Human Services Advisory Council. Can I get a motion?
I'm happy to move it.
Councillor Well has moved approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 6-0, excellent. And finally, item 251-23, the reappointment of Joanna Josephson as a Newton Library trustee. Can I get a motion?
I'm happy to move it.
Councillor Noel has happily moved approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? 6-0, thank you. I believe that we have happily come to the end of our agenda for the evening. Our next meeting will be on Jacqueline, August 19th.
August 16th. You were
When I said
close.
19, I meant 16. On August 16th, Jacqueline and I are going over what items we have. I want to leave plenty of time that night because we're planning to take public comments on the tree ordinance. As you all know, we have promised repeatedly that folks would have an opportunity to weigh in on the straw votes as taken by the committee and where that ordinance is. Jacqueline and I have made significant progress. We have not yet completed, but we have made significant progress on some of the materials that we were asked to compile by, I think, Council Baker and others to sort of summarize the decisions that we made, to summarize what the committee, what the general straw vote is leading towards as separate and distinct from what the ordinance currently reads. So again, I think we're in good shape with that. We'll get those finalized, obviously, before the meeting so that we can take plenty of public comments on the tree ordinance. So, you know, people who are interested in that, spread the word. August 16th is when we're planning to take those public comments so that at some point we can move forward.
Just double checking. So, because I know there have been lots of emails at various points about various meetings. So this is it for us for July, or there is another meeting in July, or?
I
This
don't
is
think we have
it for
another meeting in
July.
July. This is
Okay.
it. Yeah.
And then so far we think that August 16th one, is that going to be the only one in August, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
I think
that one's
we-
not yet in the council calendar, just FYI.
Okay. Yeah, I think we as a committee had talked about meeting once in July and once in August. And so those
Okay.
are going to be the two meetings. Then we'll obviously get back to.
Hey,
regular
I'm
scheduling
happy
in
to
September.
have a break. I'm just making sure that I didn't, forget to put something in my calendar. So.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate it. And I'm glad you pointed out that it's not yet in the calendar. So
How much time for the trees in August?
I'm not sort of setting a specific, 1 hour or 2 hours or anything like that. I want to let people say their piece. I want to let people speak. We will, as usual, limit the duration of individual comments.
Yeah.
But I'm not planning on having an overall time limit because I do want to let people express themselves. And we'll just kind of have to see if the agenda fills up or if there's anything else we sort of need to do in August. I think my preference would be to leave as much time as possible that night for the public comments and to push other council business off until September if possible.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.